Hey guys, hey Shantanu. How do I pronounce your name best?
Shantanu, perfect.
Shantanu,
You can
Shantanu.
call me Shan if you want for short.
Hi guys, and welcome again for another episode on the RevOps and ABM alignment. Shantanu now is here from Gong. Everybody knows Gong, a reputable company. Today, Shantanu, I would like to dive deeper into your experience, your background, and then into Gong.io. But first and foremost, you were telling me that your father was in Indian Army. You were traveling a lot. You were taking a lot of experience in this diverse India. I've been also there. I love the country. I love the food. I love the people. So we can geek out a lot about India, about RevOps, about ABN. So tell me, did the experience in India and all the traveling connects you somehow with RevOps and what you do today? How is these two connected?
Oh, absolutely, Ramesh. So first of all, very excited to be here on the podcast. Thank you for having me. Um, you're right. If I think about, you just mentioned growing up, I was pretty much moving from, I think, a bit of an army brat, if that's the phrase you might use, where you actually have roots down in one place for 2 to 3 years and you move very quickly. In fact, right now I'm in Dublin, Ireland. I've been here for more than eight and a
Uh-huh.
half years. That's the longest I've been in one location. And this house is the longest I've been in one house in my life. So growing up, again, to your point, I think the two big things I learned, number one, just adaptability, because as you're moving across, there's you have to make a new set of friends. You don't really have your own home or childhood home to really think about. This is my bed. This is how I. So you get used to moving around, adaptability, change. That's all something which is very easy for. I won't say easy, but it's something which is more. You get more used to it. Change is never easy to deal with, but you get
How
more
many
used to it.
schools did you change, by the way?
So I've gone to 9 schools. Right.
Whoa! So you can tell us some tactics of how you were making friends when you were like.
Exactly. It was tough, and the good thing is because a lot of times you go into a place where there are a lot of different people who've moved as well, so
Ah,
that
okay.
helped. But also a couple of times I've gone in and as most parents would do, you try and get the best education for your children. And so I went to a school where let's say I was the only new child in there, and my brother, I have an older brother, and we both used to move
Uh-huh.
together. So there was a lot of, I would say, learning from each other, but also then so my brother became my best friend through my
Uh,
childhood. And then you then quickly you get used to making new friends, saying goodbye to friends over a certain number of times as well. So that was, I think, a good learning. The
and
other big piece,
these schools. Sorry, I'm just curious. Like, when you were going to these schools, they were also from other army families, or it was.
so some, but again,
Uh-huh.
I think until I don't know if the schooling system was the same everywhere, but let's say until primary, I was in
Uh-huh.
pretty much, let's say, in army related schools. But after primary, when you want to go into more serious studies in middle school and secondary, you then go into more convent schools or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
where you or
Mm-hmm.
which would have a higher population of civilian population, if I might call it that. But yeah, it was a good lesson. And then again, I think it helped. That to me is the second piece, which is you actually learned how to really manage stakeholders, which is a very interesting way of putting it. But literally, if I connect that to RevOps, it's your job to come in as the outsider quite often and help people understand where you're coming from, what's happening. So that was a good lesson, I'd say. Growing
Ah,
up.
that's cool. So you you went then to uni in Pune. It was like around computer science, or
Hmm. Yes.
I'm just trying to understand how someone with your profile ends up doing what you do today.
Very good question, Romeo. And again, because you obviously have been to Mumbai and India, you know Pune well. So I was a computer engineer. I In those 4 years, I learned very quickly that coding was not for me, even though
Mm,
I had visions of me doing that. In fact, I have videos of me as a child saying I want to be a software engineer when I grow up, and then I
uh-huh.
realized through those 4 years I wasn't going to. So I very quickly pivoted during those 4 years. I Even within college, I realized I was more pulled towards extracurriculars even within college and going more towards, let's say, competitions or events or business plan competitions, things like that. And then I quickly started preparing for an MBA instead rather than going down the route of technology.
Mm,
I actually got a couple of job offers to be a software engineer in a couple of, including one of the Tata Consulting Services, which is one of India's
Yeah, yeah,
big
they are
conglomerates.
huge,
Yes,
like
but I
huge
never started.
reputation.
Exactly, but I never started there because I ended up going in for my MBA instead. Went in for my MBA. I was in Ahmedabad, which is in Gujarat. Again, I don't know if
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
has to go there.
RIT.
Was a great experience over those 2 years, and I learned very quickly that's the world I was going into. And yeah, I moved away from engineering then, but I always had that interest for technology and computers, which eventually got me back 5 years after MBA to software.
So Shantanu, be honest, like going into nice schools, where is the best food in India? Which region?
So a lot of I think so. My personal favorite is, I think I would say, the chicken biryani, and
Mm.
um, where I spent a lot of my time. In fact, my parents have now retired in Hyderabad down south.
Oh, okay.
Some of your listeners who probably might know, this is where Google and Microsoft have gone and set up
Mm.
their base in India. I say it's because of the biryani, but food is
Yeah, yeah,
amazing,
they are good biryani.
and the people are amazing there as well.
Yo, so this is like asking which CRM is best, right? Like Salesforce
Exactly.
or HubSpot. So then you end up in being in a SaaS world, right? Like being in
Mhm.
this tech world, and now into Gong. I know that we don't have that much time, so we will speed up here a little bit with from fire questions, and I will go directly into the
Go
things.
for it. Go for it.
Gong, we all know Gong, like fuck man, I love Gong. Like the Gong IO labs, like 2 years ago, with all the emails, what kind of wording to use, what kind of how to do the cold calls, how to
Yes.
do the soft CTAs, the follow ups. Like Udi and the team, man, amazing content, amazing people. I was listening to some of other your podcast and Udit podcast, but here's I like to challenge it. Winning by design comes up, and they say these days we are SaaS world kind of
Mhm.
fucked because 2023 was hard.
Right.
We spammed everyone with email outreach. Google is coming, changing the whole
Mhm. Mhm.
spiel with the privacy.
Yes.
Um, all the outreach motion doesn't work. Too many webinars. Jesus Christ! Like everybody is doing some webinar.
Exactly.
Then you have then you have podcasts also, right? Like everybody suddenly started to do podcasting, and everybody's a podcast like
Really.
this one. So
Fair
what
enough.
the hell? Like what works, what doesn't work, and then you have these ABM and these sexy words like RevOps in the mix. So we are a bit confused. How do you see all this? Like, how do you see the RevOps, the ABM, everything that we do in these uncertain times, and how you guys do it?
Great, Raghu. So I'll start with maybe the first point you mentioned about go-to-market fit and the world changing, especially with the new Google roles and the
Yeah.
rules, and I'll come into the more broader ecosystem and how do you stay relevant. If I go back to that piece, and I think, if anything, I know that you mentioned some of our competitors are probably a little bit concerned with some of the changes that are coming in. At Gong, we're actually embracing that change because a large part of what Gong is about going deeper. It's not about spray and pray. It's the opposite of that, and which is also why, if you think about, you probably heard the phrase "first mover advantage" quite often. I think in this case, we've actually got the last mover advantage in the prospecting space.
Mm.
Because if you think about the entire go-to-market life cycle of the value chain from beginning to end, you're reaching out to whoever you want to contact. You actually do prospecting to them. You help engage and drive value from the conversations and outreach and connectivity that you actually have back and forth over time. And then eventually you're hopefully banking dollars. If you think about that entire value chain with them, and having happy customers in the end, there are a lot of processes and systems built around that. And that's what the massive SaaS tech stack, I think it's what, more than 10,000 players in that field. Actually, if I combine all of the different
Yeah.
versions and verticals that you can get in there, the the toughest problem to solve in all of the pieces I just talked about there, Romeo, is actually that piece of using the conversations we have and putting in AI. Now, if I think about Gong, and you're an old fan of Gong, you'll know that we've been talking about AI before it became cool. So
Yeah, yeah,
we've
yeah.
had AI in our system since 2015, 2016, and we've used that to really understand context. So our platform is backed on more than 3 billion interactions that we've had across our customer base, right? And
Mm,
using that to really help drive insights from conversation, and those insights eventually lead to actions. That's what is the core of what we're doing. And then we've gone across that value chain. And then this is where I'm coming back to the last mover advantage. As we went into the prospecting space, we
mm,
learned from some of the mistakes that some of our competitors did and some of the great things that our competitors did. And we've tried to then build a product which actually adapts to that. So in the world of Google clamping down, like you said, on how often you can outreach, how and so many and guidelines on that, the part which is very relevant for where Gong comes in is we actually use the account context and deep insights on the account to help you surface a very few but impactful outreaches. We also help
mhm.
your team get a lot more time back in how they respond. There's tons of research on how much time people spend on preparing the right information, researching the actual prospect reaching out to. All of that is solved for. And in the same breath, across the value chain, in the end, we help in prospecting and forecasting as well.
So how do you guys do this? So let's go. So I know Gong as a conversational
Hmm.
intelligence tool, right? So in very short, as an outsider,
Hmm.
how I understand it, you have all the transcriptions of all the conversations that happen. You break this huge amount of data into different taggings or different categories, and from there you extract insights. You can extract different kind of actionables that
Right.
you can later on give to, let's say, sales managers or the sales reps to better understand the qualitative information of
Yes.
those discussions, to
Hmm.
feedback
Yes.
back to the sales reps on how to do it more effectively,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
So by having all this data, you can really understand it better, right? And
Hmm.
I know that there was a book about this that you can, like, you guys did. I think it was you guys that you detected this, especially nowadays, that there is a lot of uncertainty and people need
Right.
these days much more like a, not necessarily consultative, but more directional, more guidance type of
Hmm. Hmm.
sales, especially
Right.
in SaaS, right? So um, you get all these insights, and in an ABM motion, how could you use these insights, or how, or what else do I miss from what you just mentioned? I'm
That's
trying
a
to see a use case.
no, no, it's a good. Sorry, I'm just getting a call here. I think the you captured it well. I think the only thing I would add there, right, and this is where I go back to AI. So many people talk about doing AI, but there are three very important things to get AI right. Because the way you just outlined that, Romeo, about we
Mm-hmm.
get all the data, we get all the information in, and then it's not only built capturing all that information is one part, but the most important part is once you understand that data, then you can apply to all relevant workflows. And I'll give you one use case. But before I go into that, there's three very important things. Number one, what's the volume of data that you have? Is that volume sufficient enough to give you the right patterns? Second, that volume of data you have should be quite relevant, right? Because if I think about, and again, everybody thinks about Chat GPT when you think about AI today, all of the volume of the internet is on it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you ask ChatGPT to write you a sales specific mail for a certain email for a certain specific use case, it might not be as relevant because
Correct.
ChatGPT will also have sales pitches for, or maybe a sales joke about selling an ice cream to an Eskimo
Yeah.
in the same place as doing B2B sales. So then how do you
Yeah.
get that's the second piece. How do you make your data set very relevant and you almost bound that in within those constraints that are relevant for you? And the third piece, and this is where security comes in a lot. You and I are both sitting in Europe, where this
Yeah.
is even more of a question than anywhere else in the world. But going really clear on when you are playing with so much customer data and their end customer data, how do you ensure you're compliant? You have all the right information. So with those three pieces baked in, Let's say that's I think at the core of it. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you have all of that, you're getting signals, you're able to get and identify and work on it. The world is then really your oyster. You mentioned about how do you use it in terms of ABM.
Yeah.
At the core of ABM is really understanding your account, right? Because if you're doing account based marketing, you need to have
Correct.
very, very contextual, deep context, and this is what you get from Gong. So, for instance, if the use case I'll give is you are, let's say, I'm going completely into a marketing use case. I'm not even going to sales, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Doing a marketing meeting, trying to figure out which accounts to go after. Um, as always, you probably have had some conversations. You probably have a list from sales. Instead of actually having to make that list in a manual way, you can use Gong to go in
Mm-hmm.
and work through accounts and say, okay, of these 10, literally go in and say, for this specific tranche of accounts, you can ask the AI within Gong to give you a sense of what's happened at the account. So really going deep
Oh,
into each
okay.
of them. And let's say you pick your top 10 enterprise accounts you want to go and do something big for. You can go into each enterprise account and say what's relevant for them, what the challenges they have faced, what are the things that have come up in conversation, any patterns. And the AI will then go back through all the conversations over the last few weeks, months, potentially years, depending on how long you've worked with them, and give you context on what to use. So again, it's very deep. You can go really, really, really deep in this.
So you are using some kind of semantic search within the tool, right? So I can just literally go and say, okay, I'm selling, I don't know, manufacture some kind of manufacturing software in Spain, and I need some different use cases, and I can just go in and see where did we have some discussions with manufacturing in this particular use case in Spain, right?
Absolutely. And you can. And again, I think there are a lot more qualified people than me in the product team. Remember, I quit after software engineering studies, but
No, 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 but for a
but
non for the non-engineerings,
exactly,
just to
exactly. So I
understand,
think
right?
that's a good example. And again, I'll give you another use case, right? So let's say you're selling to Google. I'll just take an example, and you really want to go in. There's a deal which is in potentially in your pipeline. You probably have um, a change in your executive team, and that's happened a lot in the last year, right? We've had new CXOs across different companies. Um, your new CXO comes and says, "Okay, I'm going to go and meet Google. What do we know about the account?" Typically, what would have happened is there would have been a document created, a Word doc, which would have gone into a five people would have spent 1 hour each doing that, would have gone up. The CXO would have read it. After that, that document is shelfware, right? It's dead. It's gone. What you
Mm.
can do with Gong is you actually have what we call Ask Me Anything. You could literally say, okay, give me a summary in this bullets, the format that you want, get it, screenshot it, send it to the CXO. It's done in 1 second. So that's
Okay,
the
so
kind
it's
of
not only voice necessarily.
exactly. It's everything. It's based on conversations that have happened. It's based on emails that have gone through, and I think that's the beauty of Gong as well. Because
Mm.
when I talk about capturing, so many people capture information either from either the CRM or maybe some call recordings and try and, like you said, run scripts through a certain piece. Gong literally captures all interactions you've had with the customers, and that is
Hmm.
very powerful because you're also able to pinpoint what's happened in the CRM. You're also able to pinpoint what's actually conversations that have happened, and that's helped us build one of our first product extensions, which was going into forecast. So a lot of companies are now using Gong to help forecast. So it's not just stopping at that coaching layer, which is something about the entire. If you broaden the horizons of the revenue workflow, we are now able to really drive intelligence and reporting as well.
Hmm. Okay, so it's like Dionysius, right? Like you orchestrate and you understand everything all around the organization, so that you can create good wine. Yeah, because
It's a
that
good,
was Dionysius was
I
doing.
like that analogy. I think we should send it to Udi, like you said. But again,
Okay.
and the analogy I actually use also is if I think about from a pure RevOps lens, and um, I grew up in a world where we always talked about the CRM being the source of truth.
Mm.
And if I bring that to, yes, that is the source of truth, I almost think about the analogy being a computer with a hard disk. If you think about the big giant PCs with multiple hard disks you connect, you have those hard disks within that. But then you have the operating system, and the operating system is what you are using on a day-to-day basis. So that to us is Gong. It's how
Mm,
do you consolidate? I mentioned there are 10,000 tools or systems across the board. The average AE logs into 6 different systems to close a deal.
mm.
How do you then remove all of that and you're just logging into one OS, going in, which is pretty much, let's say, Gong in this example, and really using Gong to help drive that, bring that 6 down to maybe 4, because you still probably have to send a DocuSign somewhere.
Yeah, so now I would like to, in the next 15 minutes, to discuss a bit how you guys go to market, because you
Hmm.
are really known by Udi's idea on the Super Bowl ad. And yeah, like he explains it very well with I think in on Exit 5 or with David Cancel. I think yeah, from Drift there is an episode if you guys want to listen to on how that ad was done. It's not like the Super Bowl,
Right.
the big Super Bowl. They were like smaller
Yes.
states that you could do ads in different states. So don't think that Gong is yet throwing so much budget on millions and millions of dollars for 7 seconds of ads.
Right.
Maybe you guys could do it, but yeah, I don't know if the persona is the right one.
Fair enough.
But you guys are creative. That's what I
Fair
want
enough.
to say. Like you're really creative, and it's B2B and it's AI and so on, but still you can be super creative. And this creativity these days is like something that we are looking for, because as winning by design also put
Right.
it, it's it's hard to have that the go to market fit. So can you give us some kind of go to market motions that you guys will run in 2024 or you were running, obviously whatever you can share,
Right.
that can gives us some inspiration, because we are looking for that for sure.
That is fair. And by the way, our marketing team is really unparalleled in terms of just the creativity and the work that they've been doing. But if I might go in fact deeper on on the opposite example, right? Because you mentioned, as you rightly said, Super Bowl is going really big, and we tried that, and going really big, and making a big splash, which we did. The other piece, going back to the new world, like you said, it's, in the new world, it's more about how do you make really relevant
Mm,
and specific, almost, I won't say opportunities, but occasions to really connect with customers. And the one thing which we've been doing over the last year a lot more successfully is actually doing more exclusive and smaller events as well. So I think
mm-hmm.
that's something which has been very
Event.
interesting in terms of, um, if I think about identifying the right ICP, going deep into who are the right deals or personas within not just the company, but the right companies within your entire data set. And again, bringing my RevOps hat, really going deep into using account information and figuring out which are the top companies which have a higher likelihood to buy. Or if you have existing customers, how do you ensure that you're continuing to really go deep into your um, big and relevant customers. You then start creating these smaller occasions where you have exclusive dinners or smaller events, and that's been very helpful, because with that we've been able to build some really deep relationships within the customers as well. And then um, an example of that is we actually hosted a couple of RevOps dinners last year in London, for example. And again, this
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
from a European lens that I'm sharing. And it was great to just go in and deep and have those networks started being built, and it helped create that community for RevOps, but also a good awareness of Gong for, let's say, folks who were not aware of Gong as well.
Okay, so more targeted events
Hmm.
on a specific topic with
Right.
some thought leadership.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool that you guys do something like this. And uh, I was actually doing few ABM strategies and proposing a these type of mini events,
Hmm.
but I wonder, I got some kind of pushback
Hmm.
on these kind of events, and mainly the ROI, right? Like
Right.
there are few things too big of an effort for um, the outcome
Mm-hmm.
So that means that I need to do a bunch of different events so that I can be that thought leader, because Gong is already a thought leader, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when you send out an email and there is a Gong domain, like it's pretty much, if you know about, if you're in the space and if you
Right.
send it to some folks in London in RevOps, they're like, oh, wow, okay, I want to see what these guys are saying,
Right.
right?
Fair
But
enough.
if I'm a new kid, in the block, like you go to 9 schools, right? Like you're trying to make friends and
Right.
you want to go out. Like,
Yes.
how would you approach these events, or how would you um,
Yes.
make it also in a RevOps and ABM motion
Yes.
so that it's more
Yes.
relevant, that
Love it.
you can build up your thought leadership?
Yes, so great. So, and I'll apply the analogies you rightly said. When you're new in a new school,
Yeah.
you try and find spaces where people are already congregating. You try and almost put yourself out there to try and connect. So if I think about it in the same way, where keep being conscious of budget, being conscious of where you're coming from, we're also in a very interesting space where most personas that you care about, um, I think 2021 onwards, community has become a massive thing.
Yeah.
Where there are so many. In fact, I believe there might be an overload of Slack communities in some ways, but there's so many different communities being built. And I think I would say in the last 6 months or so, there's been a huge movement to try and take those virtual communities into the real world. So I
Yes.
think the way I would think about it for newer companies in this space is identify which, again, going back to the persona, identify which persona you want to target, figure out if they actually have a community. Quite often they'd be delighted to have a sponsor come up and sponsor mini events for them. The ROI would be actually great because there's probably a community of people already in there. um,
Hmm.
and I mean, for example, I have actually set up a RevOps community for Europe.
Hmm.
And this
Hmm.
is just, it's we're RevOps people. We're not really as brash and extroverted, so we don't have a lot of communication going on there. But it's a group which is connected, and when people have questions, they come in, and it's 100 plus people. And
Hmm.
if a company comes in and says, "Hey, we want to sponsor this," happy to give them some time if they want to talk to the group as well, so we can do an event with them. So small
Hmm.
things. That's just an example I've taken, but similar cases can be done with whatever persona you're working with.
Yeah, and I think the this idea of shifting the mindset is so important, because we come from an era, one, COVID, virtual
Yeah.
summits, virtual events, webinars. It's like this fatigue already of
Yes.
virtual events, right? And then you go into email outreach, then you
Mhm.
go into the fatigue of blogs and whatever that's like
Yes.
even forgotten.
Yes.
But and then we are in this time that, okay, wow, now I need to go out of my house, now I need to actually connect with people, talk to people, have events,
Yeah.
right? We are going back to that human to human interaction, and it's hard to grasp this, that, oh, I cannot do any more 100K
Yes.
impressions. It was only 100 people who are from RevOps in this community, right?
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think this is hard to still digest,
True.
um that the volume is lower. This
I
is
I love what you said. In fact, I'll say three words here, and I'll go deep into. I think going mid fun. Three phrases. Go. Sorry, by the way, I have gestures on and
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah, I still
Going.
have it also.
So one is going mid funnel versus top of the funnel. I think that's one. That's
Hmm.
very second. Really focusing on outcomes for customers and in this world. And third, if I again put on my marketing lens, really, really forgetting about attribution, because that's a big challenge
Oh,
always.
yeah,
I know I probably opened a Pandora's box with that word, so I won't go deep into that. But
yeah.
on the first two, basically, I'm saying I love what you're saying, Romeo, because you don't, in the world where there's no more spray and pray, you don't have as many thousands of impressions. Really, where the most bang for your dollars invested in marketing is coming in is in the middle of the funnel, not as much top of the funnel. And in the middle of the funnel, how can you really help build, again, to your point, when you have the smaller numbers, how do you really get them to understand and see the value you'll get. And that's where the outcomes piece comes in so important, because in a world where every single SaaS company specifically, but in general tech companies as a whole, are really looking at overall ROI, overall profitability, margins, unit economics have become so important. You really want to help define, these are the outcomes I'm giving you. So it's no longer just painting a picture of,
Mm.
hey, here's another shiny tool, which is what 10 emails I get probably all have, oh, you need to do this,
Yeah, yeah, of
marketing,
course.
you need to change this, A, B, C, D. But you want to say, these are the outcomes I'm going to give you as a customer, and this is how I'll do it. And I think that deeper conversation is only possible when you're in the middle of the funnel.
Yeah, in the last 5 minutes, I want to also talk about a bit more like enterprise deals, because
Mm-hmm.
what challenges I hear from different clients and different people I talk to is that, okay, if you're a SaaS and you have a persona like RevOps people or salespeople, or we are like in this bubble, right? Like, okay, they make communities, they hang out, they go to parties, whatever. You just go to Dublin, you stay for 2 weeks, you get to a few parties, and you already know a bunch of startup people. It's not like hard.
Right.
But what happens with the folks that are from enterprises, let's say you want to make a small deal with an airline, right? And then you have this big structure with procurement, with different champions, with a lot of people that from security, compliance, you name it, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
you are just you're just a series A company. You're trying to get into just a small deal so you can have that logo, right? Like that
yes,
you work with Ryanair or whatever. So, and then the communities are not there, or
yes,
the emails don't work, these people don't meet. They are like 40 plus, they have already families, and they don't have time to meet with you in a bar in Dublin.
yes,
So the only thing you could do is make a big party, right?
yeah,
In a big event where these guys go. But I don't have money for that. So
yes.
I have some ideas, but I just want to pick your brain a bit. How do you see that?
Great, and but that's a very very good example, because if I think about, especially in the world where a lot of companies in tech grew big, tech selling to tech, and smaller
Yeah.
tech selling to smaller tech companies. When you go bigger, I think there's two things which are very important. Number one, and I'm sure this is a phrase you've heard, said, internalized, is you need to have a very strong burning platform,
Mm,
or a really strong solution that you're getting in, because it's not going to be about, oh, I have this great product and they don't care. It's about, what problem of my business are you fixing, and being able to sometimes help them understand the challenge. So I was at LinkedIn for 5 years, and and a lot of these enterprise companies are really, and including LinkedIn, was notorious for just building a lot of solutions. We didn't buy things as much
mm,
when I was in there, again, over time. And LinkedIn is a Gong customer as well. But when I was there, I remember doing things like planning. We used to throw people at problems back in those days. So helping them figure out, hey, by the way, here are 5 things you probably are doing in a very manual way. This is how you get time back. This is how, and it's almost, and this is the eventual outcome, going back to the solution you're trying to get to. And the second thing, which I think is very important, and it's almost like a mindset shift, is, if you think about these big enterprises, the roles are so, depending on the designation and titles and so on. A lot of times we don't know who the right. We talk so much about personas. The ABM, we need to know who the personas you're targeting. In some of the big enterprises, the persona is very different from what it might be defined as. So, I'll give you an example. A lot of these 10,000 tech tools, they always say, oh, we need to talk to the chief revenue officer, the head of sales, whatever. In a
yeah.
large enterprise with so many, the chief revenue officer does not have time
Yeah,
to
for
care
sure.
about which system is going into the tech stack. Somebody on his team, or their team, his or her team, is actually taking care of it. And hopefully, if there's a RevOps person, maybe and even that head of RevOps might not be doing it. It might be someone on her team who's actually doing that. So
Yeah.
there's so many questions there. So I think it's both helping solve the right problem and finding the problem, and second, knowing the right person to reach out to, and then doing all the different pieces we talked about in the investments there.
Yeah, and I come also from corporate world. I worked in DHL and then in Electrolux and in different B2 B e-commerces. And what I can say is you need to create some kind of playbook or some kind of
Mm-hmm.
content that really helps the jobs to be done.
Mm.
Like you really need to know the jobs to be done, because if and the let's say autonomy of the whole organization, like you really need to understand, like it's impossible to sell to Electrolux if I'm thinking I was on learning and development technologies, right? So all kind of, and there were a lot of them. We were migrating from SAP. It was that time of from premise we were going into the cloud, and we were
Right.
looking at all learning and development. I did the same in DHL. And really, like my only criteria was selecting vendors were, did you work with like appliances type of companies? No, okay, out. Like I was not even thinking about anything else,
Yeah.
right? And then
Right.
if you worked, if you would give me frameworks on how to implement these tools, if you would give me templates, if you would give
Yes.
me questions to ask other vendors, because for
Yes.
many companies, it's new, and you as you said, you cannot go to the head of the department. You
Yes.
cannot go. And then obviously all these startups, they ignore the individual contributors, while
Mm-hmm.
those individual contributors, they will mention your solution in a meeting if they are impressed, and they are your friends that
Mm-hmm.
will get you. But no, but you need to have time for it, and to have
Yes.
patience for it, because if
Yes.
not, it's impossible, right?
Uh,
S
Great.
And then pop-up events. I think pop-up events that sit on top of the big events.
Mm-hmm.
It's another way to meet these people and to have their jobs to be done and that content, right? So if there is a big event for appliance innovation, right? Taking the Electrolux example, right? You create an event next to that big appliance innovation, whatever, where you can see those Electrolux people. Like you need to meet whoever within that organization that is closer to your personas. Like sometimes, I don't know, but we ignore even the influencers, right?
Yes. And that's so, and
Like,
exactly,
oh, he's
yes.
in accounting and he doesn't care about my tool.
Exactly. And which is why
Uh,
in enterprise, we could keep talking about deal cycle being much longer. It's because of the number of people you have to align and all the functions, accounting, procurement, finance. Like it's a very big process. I love that. Yeah.
So I know that we need to end. Shantanu, tell us where can people reach you? Tell us about this community, and what are some new resources for RevOps folks that you would recommend?
Great. So I think so. I'm most active on LinkedIn. I would say, again,
Mm,
being an ex LinkedIn
yeah.
person myself. So LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. In terms of the actual community, like I said, we've set up a RevOps dedicated community for Europe right now.
Mm,
And again, reach out to me if you're in RevOps, interested in connecting and setting up. More than happy to do that. And then third, I think just a new resource. I'd say we talked about Slack communities earlier. For anyone interested in RevOps, there's one in particular, RevOps Co-op. It's been set
mm-hmm.
up by someone in the US. It's a great resource. A lot of people in there, very active. It has thousands of RevOps people globally in there. Um, People come in and ask questions like, "Hey, I'm trying to get foreign exchange and currencies set up on the CRM. What do I do?" Like simple things like that to even more complex conversations. And in fact, they're doing their first in-person RevOps event in May in San Diego.
Mm.
Um, so I'll be speaking at that one as well. So that's really exciting space to place to come in and really understand things. Great set of people there.
And people there also talk about ABM. Usually, RevOps people
Yes,
talk about ABM, because if you
right.
have the budgets for RevOps, then ABM is
Yes,
somewhere also there. So it's
absolutely.
impossible not to get some resources. And the guys, I'm also a member and
Oh,
in the Rise
great.
membership. So,
Oh, fantastic.
so,
Brilliant. We can
so
connect.
for sure, I recommend it. Thanks a lot, Shantanu. And hopefully we will meet in Dublin one day, so you show me the best Indian restaurant there. For sure, you know some of them.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to that from you. We'll remind you of all the vada pav that you had in Mumbai.
For sure, I need the pani puri and the vada pav.
We'll get to that.
Thanks a lot, man, and
Thank you for
thanks
having me.
guys for joining us for today's episode. Take care.
Take care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.